Hello, and welcome to November. I just finished listening to Dracula by Bram Stoker. It's a little book, you might have heard of it. It's actually not a very small book, is it? No. Okay, so this was like the ideal thing to be listening to through October. Obviously, it took me a little longer than that, but yeah, I'd never read this one before. Obviously, it's the tale of Dracula. I've seen at least some Dracula movie. I don't even know which one. I don't remember. I can tell you ones I haven't seen, but I'm like, which one did I see? I don't know. But the point is that I knew the vague shape of the story, but you know, a couple of the characters' names were familiar. But other than that, it was like, you know, I didn't know it that well. So it was interesting. I really wonder what this would be like to read without knowing what a vampire is, and like without knowing kind of some of those basic facts, you know. But okay, basic premise of this book specifically is it's epistolary, which is fun. Basically, that just means that the whole book is told through like journal entries, letters, newspaper articles, stuff like that. I did think the newspaper articles were, I felt like the writing was a little weird. I was like, I don't think this sounds like a newspaper article, but I could be wrong. This is an old book. Who knows what newspaper articles sounded like back then? Not me. I could find out, but I'm not going to. Okay, and yeah, so a lot of it is just the journal entries of these different characters who are involved in the plot, and well, it's essentially about how Dracula comes to England and he starts fucking around and causing problems in the lives of this specific group of people. But it starts out as this travelogue, and you're just kind of like, this is nice. Jonathan Harker, he's on his first big, like, assignment as a solicitor out of fucking law school or whatever. And for some reason, he has to go to Transylvania, which I think is in Romania. Don't quote me. But it's in that general part of Europe. It is a real place, but, like, it's not its own country, so I don't remember what country it's in. Anyway, to see this Count Dracula, who is, for some reason, needs a solicitor for this, but he's like buying property in England. I don't know. And I mean, yeah, you need a lawyer when you're buying property, but like, it just seems like, a lot of work. Okay, whatever, I'm getting off topic. None of this matters, and I don't need to explain the entire plot, but basically, Jonathan starts just kind of being like, some things are a little bit weird here. I mean, it gets weird really quickly, but you know, the actual vampireness of it all is a little bit gradual to get in there. So it's fun to read knowing kind of where it's going, because I'm like, oh, I can see all these different things that Jonathan is just like mentioning and doesn't realize their significance yet. And then like later you have all this stuff with Mina and Lucy in, I forgot the name of the town, in England, and it's kind of interesting because the book basically like ramps up through all this Jonathan Harker's journal stuff to the point where all this insane shit is happening, and then you think he probably died, and then it goes back and it's about his fiancée and her friend Lucy in this little town in England, and it's actually kind of boring for a while. Like, I'm giving you, you know, I know it's going somewhere. And there were little hints and things, but I was kind of like, I don't know, I'm a little bit bored, honestly. But got through it. It did get more exciting. It's a decent book. I mean, whatever, it's a classic. It's the vampire classic. Like, the vampire stuff is pretty great. I have questions. My main questions are, one, why does Van Helsing know all of this stuff about vampires? Like, what? It's never, I didn't think it was really explained why he knows all this stuff about vampires. Like, he's gotten some of this information from a colleague or something as well, but I'm like, where is this? I don't really get it. A lot of the stuff he says, honestly, just seems like he just fucking made it up right then. And secondly, my biggest question, how did Jonathan escape the, I don't know, brides or whoever they are of Dracula, the women in the castle who were like going to eat him. Why didn't they eat him? Why didn't he die? How did he get away? Not explained. So that's too bad, because I wanted like to know, you know, I'm curious. Anyway, other highlights include like this like interminably long newspaper article about a wolf that escaped from the zoo. Old local people color for fun. Just a lot of, oh my god, okay, there's just a lot of like very Christian stuff in this, because one of the things with the vampires is part of the way to defeat them is to use like holy water or a communion wafer, and like the there's a lot of talk of like the soul, like if you're a vampire, if you get turned into a vampire, it's like your soul is trapped, you're dead but your soul is trapped, you know. So part of like, so if you kill a vampire, you know, like you chop off their head, that allows the soul to finally escape and go to rest. There's just like a lot of that. There's also an American cowboy character. That's how he's described. Not entirely sure what he's doing in England. Like, he knows some of the other characters, like they've gone hunting together apparently. Not really sure how they met. Don't really remember if that was mentioned like very briefly at the beginning and I forgot it, probably. But it was just funny. And yeah, I'm glad I read it, because I've read Frankenstein years ago, right? And it's always like, those are the two. And now I've read both of them. So it was good. Good one, Bram. Hello and good morning. I finished reading X-Wing Wedge's Gamble, the second book of the X-Wing series. By Michael Stackpole. Oh boy. So, okay. It took me like a month to read this because I really just wasn't reading it. It's not like it's tough to get through. I just didn't pick it up for like 2 weeks straight. But finished her last night. It's a fun book. There is less actual like dogfighting in space in this book. There's a pretty good one at the end where they're like flying around through the I don't know what to call them, of Coruscant, like in between all the buildings, you know. But it's pretty wild. So most of the book, though, the premise is that Rogue Squadron is sent to Coruscant, which is the capital of the Empire. And naturally, of course, they want to take that planet. But they're sent to Coruscant undercover to do some reconnaissance and figure out the best way to take down the planetary shields without utterly destroying them. Like, they don't want to destroy them because then they won't be able to use them once they've taken the planet, right? Obviously. So there's a lot of that. Sneaking around. It's fun. Corrin has to sneak around with Aricey and is just like uncomfortable about it the whole time. The amount of weird relationship drama that Corrin Horn is in for someone who is not in a relationship with anybody. Amazing. It's mostly just kind of this thing where Aricey kind of keeps trying to seduce him. And he's like, I mean, you're hot, but I don't know. And then like his crush on Mirax, they had a cute scene toward the end where he finally asked her out and she's like, okay. But then the thing is, this book ends with everybody thinking Corrin is dead when he's actually been captured by Izard and taken to Lusankia prison, where she torments her victims and brainwashes them. And sometimes when they get, you know, anyway, she's like, I'm gonna make you betray the rebellion and everything you stand for and like all this shit. And I'm like, yes, yes. Ugh, this book is so dumb. I love these fucking Star Wars books, okay? Like, Star Wars books are a thing that I know way too much about, right? Especially the older ones. Like, there are newer ones, there are newer series that have only read a bit of, or I haven't really gotten into it all. You know, I tried because I read Alphabet Squadron, right? It was a decent book, but I don't remember much of anything about it now, and it's been, I don't know, a year maybe since I read it. It has a couple of sequels. I'm like, what am I doing? What are they doing, frankly, that Alphabet Squadron doesn't work for me as much as these dumbass books from the 90s do. But, I mean, I've read this book at least 5 times, so that's probably part of it. What else to say about this? It's okay. It's got fun undercover shenanigans, even if it is ridiculous that Rogue Squadron is the group that's being sent to do this. Like, they have the kind of excuse of being like, well, we need them to be good pilots too. And I'm like, okay. Which later in the series comes up when Wedge is forming Wraith Squadron, and he's like, listen, you keep having the rogues do all these commando missions, and they're not commandos. What if we put together a squadron of people who had requisite skills to be a group of commandos simultaneously to a group of pilots? And Admiral Ackbar's like, fine. But, we'll get there eventually, right? That's book 5. Oh, what else? Let's see. Iella is in this book finally, and I love her, so we're happy about it. There's that very funny chapter where Gavin is all like, Corin, have you ever fucked an alien? He doesn't say it like that, but Corin is like, funny story. And tells it this whole story, or no, Iella tells the story, because he's like, Iella, you tell it better. And she tells it this whole story about this time, like, he went to a dance with this, like, alien woman, who was working with Corsac for a while, and then it turned out basically they're allergic to each other, like, so that's kind of funny. Her fur gave him a rash. That's the story. Oh my god. Any fucking way. It's an alright book. I like the part where they go to Kessel. That's kind of fun. Oh, I have to talk about the Imperial plot. So in this one, the Empire, their plot. So Izard is the leader of the Empire at this point. Our point of view character with the Empire is Kurtan Lure, who knows Corin and has a beef with him, right? And wants to personally kill him, but we'll see. And in this one, they get this guy, Admiral Daracote. I think it's an admiral, maybe a general. It says I should look it up. Like, I mean, no one cares, including me. General Daracote. Okay, so he is doing these insane experimentations on a bunch of aliens to create a virus. I know. I don't love it. I'm sitting here reading it like, oh great, right, I forgot the plague aspect. But it's spread by water, and it's also like more of a thing in the next book. And Izard's plan basically is to engineer this perfect virus that will attack just specific alien groups and not humans. And also that has the ability to be cured by Bacta. So like, it's totally curable, but only if you have enough Bacta. So she basically just wants to turn Coruscant into really like a time and money pit for the New Republic. Because she's like, oh, they're gonna try and take it, well, I'm gonna give it to them, but I'm gonna leave it so that like they have to deal with this whole fucking plague thing and some other stuff, and you know, it'll drain them of resources. So yeah, that's the plan, which they're sort of implementing at the very end of the book. And like at the end of the book, some of the characters are like, there seems to be this disease, there seems to be this thing going on. Several of the members of Rogue Squadron actually do catch it, but fortunately, they get back to and they don't die. The way people die from this Krytos virus is like deeply horrifying. Like they fucking melt from the inside. Practically they lose their minds. There's black sludge involved. It's disgusting. So obviously it's great, but sorry, I keep touching my hair. I have problems. So that's more of a thing in the next book, but we're seeing kind of it get developed by the Empire in this one. And, you know, that's fucked up. We meet a number of new characters in this, of course, and the one I was most excited about, besides Iella, was Aesir, who is the Bothan that Gavin ends up kind of have a little thing with later. All of my weirdly ultimately tragic OTPs from the X-Wing books. I mean, Corrin and Mirax, that works out. But a lot of other ones just like don't work out for various reasons. Someday I'm gonna get to the Wraith Squadron books and the feelings that I have for Min and Lara's relationship. It's fine. Okay. It's not fine, but like, it's fine. But anyway, I enjoyed it, and I'm gonna keep, you know, low-key reading the series as time goes on, because I'm having a good time, and they don't take that much brain power. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, yes, Wedge's gamble. He gambled and he won. All right. I read this little thing, this sweet little thing. The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nghi. The tiniest of books. I suppose it's a novella. Like, it must be, because it is so incredibly short. Yeah, so I've been really, like, failing at finishing things. I've been reading, I just haven't been finishing things. So I was like, you know what? Let's read something tiny, because I am a lot of books behind on my Goodreads goal, which I don't think I'm gonna make anyway, frankly, but like, it would be nice to fail a little less hard than I am right now. So anyway, this thing. So this little fantasy book, gosh, how do I even begin to explain it? All right, so it's set in a fantasy empire, which on the back it says it's reminiscent of Imperial China. So, okay. And basically it's about this, well, okay, there's a there's a cleric who is traveling and comes to this lake, and they're from this order that seems to like spend all of their time cataloging history and just remembering everything and getting everything written down. And so the whole thing is this character who lives at this lake, this house by the lake, Rabbit, telling the cleric various stories about Rabbit's time with the recently deceased Empress of Salt and Fortune. And these are stories of things that happened long ago when this Empress married the Emperor and was quite young, and then was put into exile at this house by the lake for a while. And then how she kind of came back and actually orchestrated a coup and took over. Which honestly made me think of Catherine the Great more than anything else, but it could largely be because I am totally ignorant of Chinese history, so like maybe something similar happened in Chinese history as well. If it didn't, it doesn't matter. It's not like the character is supposed to be a real person, but I really liked this. It was a little bit magical, and I really liked how every story would start with she finding some item in the house, and then Rabbit would be like, let me tell you the story, and would talk about, you know, how they spent their time at this house and some of the people that they knew, and like, it really, like, I mean, I say that, you know, she comes and she orchestrates this coup, but a lot of that is not on the page. Like, that's not really what this is about. Like, it happened, but it's mostly about emotions, I think. I mean, it's so little, you know, of course it doesn't have like an incredibly complicated plot or anything, but I liked it. I liked it a lot. And then I also liked that there was an interesting revelation by the end where Rabbit's stories tell us something about the Empress and something about the current Empress, who is, I think, about to be crowned. Like, she is going to the Imperial, like, capital city or whatever. That's where they're headed to see this new Empress be crowned. And it's just good. I really like the way it's written. I felt like the dialogue was a little odd. Some of the more conversational moments were like, okay, but I think it felt like odd whenever characters would talk to each other in what I think was maybe a slightly more almost like real manner, whereas the vast majority of the book, it has more of a quality like a fairy tale. I mean, it's not a fairy tale, but like, you know, it's like, that's just kind of the way it is. I'm very not good at words, but I really, really liked this. I liked the characters and the setting, and it was all just really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. So I think it's a very good read. I will say I still don't really know what this is. I think it must be a lion based on context, but I don't think it looks like a lion. It looks, oh well, that is not even remotely important, but it's wonderful. Also, for the record, for some reason before I read it, I thought it actually was about a rabbit. It's not. Her nickname is just Rabbit. So there is an intelligent talking magical bird though. So, like, you know, which I assume is this thing. I think must be what the bird is. Anyway, I really liked it. I'm really glad I read it. And yeah. All right, let's talk about Authority by Jeff VanderMeer. So this is the sequel to Annihilation, the middle book of the Southern Reach trilogy. Oh, what to say about it? I guess ultimately I didn't like it that much. Okay. First of all, like the plot this time follows on kind of after what happened in Annihilation. But now we're in the Southern Reach office building or whatever. And we're following this guy who's just been hired as the new director. Because it turns out that the psychologist in the first book was also the director of the Southern Reach. Yeah, so that's kind of weird. But they all, or at least they assume she's dead because she has not returned from the exhibition. No, that's not the right word. From the, maybe that is the right word? I don't know. But she hasn't returned from Area X, unlike a couple of other people who were in that group. So, yeah. Our new director is called Control. It's a weird nickname he's had since childhood from his weird spy grandfather. Like, okay, we learn a bunch of his just like family stuff is all complicated, but like sounds like his grandfather was some sort of spy, and then his mother is some sort of spy, working for something called Central, which it took me a while, but a chunk of the book I was like, okay, so Central runs the Southern Reach, but then it was later like, wait, but they're also the spy agency? What the fuck is happening? So I don't know. Also, this definitely is set in the United States, like I'm pretty dang sure. They never tell us what state they're in, but you know, it's gotta be a southern state with coastline. For some reason, my mind kept being like, it's in South Carolina, or like North Carolina, I don't know why, or South Carolina, one of those. I don't know why, but there you have it. Yeah, so Control has just been hired as basically as a fixer to try and fix the issues that the Southern Reach like company has basically, and they've been poking at Area X for 30 years. Like the thing has existed for like 30 years and they've been sending people in there and trying to figure out. So he starts gathering information kind of slowly over the course of the book. And oh God, it's hard to explain why I didn't really like it, beyond that it was kind of dull. Like the idea is that you're following Control as he learns stranger and stranger things in the Southern Reach, and as his coworker, like some of his coworkers start to kind of seem weird to him, some things seem to kind of be going on, he realizes eventually that this kind of spy dude that he's been calling on his phone every day with updates has been hypnotically getting like hypnotic suggestion to him, kind of like in the first book they were all doing within Area X on the trip. So like the things that he starts to discover or that start to ping him as weird are interesting. I just kind of felt like, what was really the point of it? I don't know. I mean, the last kind of just chunk of the book, the last, say, 10%, maybe 15%, finally some interesting things started happening, right? Enough so that I'm like, fuck, I guess I should probably read the third book. Which is annoying because most of this book was just like, what, why are we doing this? And it was just like, it better be going for something really interesting. And ultimately it wasn't really. Like, there was no revelation of like, oh, the aliens have been in control this whole time or something, which I think maybe would have been worthwhile. But that's not, you don't find that out. And I don't know, maybe it's true, but you don't find it out. And I don't know. I liked Control as a character. He does interact with the biologist who has returned from the expedition, that's the word, who's returned from the expedition to Area X from Annihilation. Except, this is a spoiler of course, but if you remember in Annihilation, she kind of figures out that it must be copies that are being sent back. So within this book, you're listening to it or reading it like, okay, well that's not really the biologist. And then the ending of the book is really interesting. But like, I don't think it's enough to make up for everything else. But I will read book 3 because, I don't know, I want to cross it off my list, I guess. But yeah, I would say that this whole trilogy is not really, so far, really living up to what I was hoping it would be, which is too bad, so. Please focus on me. An Agatha Christie, Death in the Clouds, by the Dame herself. I haven't read an Agatha Christie book in years, and my sister recently read one of the ones that I own, and I was like, you know what? It's been so long since I've done that, you know? Since I've really just read an Agatha Christie book. Sure, a few years ago, I was on a trip with a friend and we listened to Murder on the Orient Express. But that's one I've read several times. And I was like, no, I want to pick something up I don't think I've read before. And that was Death in the Clouds. Okay, so, I mean, it was an Agatha Christie mystery. What is there even to say? I picked it up because the premise is insane, basically. Like, Hercule Poirot is on a plane with a bunch of other people, and one of them, they realize is dead. So like, she must have been killed by somebody on the plane. Yeah, I spent this whole book being like, who could it have been? There were certain things that I did understand pretty quickly, like, what is the significance of the wasp on board that people mention, or like, what is the deal with the, like, because they think that she was killed by like a blowpipe. Somebody blew a blowpipe with like a little fucking poison dart thing in it. It's very stupid and kind of racist, but like, because they find the blowpipe, but Poirot's like, I don't know about this, and I'm just kind of reading it going, yeah, that's probably not how they killed her though. And I was right. But I had no idea who did it. Like, my best guess, you know, was, I had a guess, but like, it was not him at all. Like, I was 100% wrong. He had nothing to do with it. And the twist of who it was is actually pretty interesting because it makes you almost want to go back and look at earlier parts of the book like, wait, this guy was around a lot. He was helping Poirot do things. You know, like, I'm curious, like, I feel like, I'm trying not to spoil it, but I feel like even saying that is kind of a spoiler, but I was surprised. Also, of course, Ms. Christie got to work in a romance or two kind of potentially happening after this book is over, smattered in there because she loves to do that. But yeah, I also really enjoyed, there was a character on the plane who was a writer of mystery novels. So I think that was a bit fun, where some of the other characters are like, that's, you know, person like that, you know, thinks about murder a lot. Maybe he did it. I was like laughing. I was like, if he was the murderer, I would be the most surprised, because it would just be really funny for like a woman who wrote like over 80 murder mysteries to just be like, maybe it was the mystery author who thinks of murder all day. But that's not who it was. I guess there's a list here of all the Hercule Poirot mysteries, and they're in order. Death in the Clouds is all the way up here. I'm like, wow, all right. I didn't realize, like, well, first of all, she wrote so many Poirot mysteries, but also that, like, if this is a relatively early one. It's like in the first third. Also, I'm looking at some of these titles. What was the word? Where did I see it? The Labors of Hercules. What is that? Oh my god. Now, I've read a lot of Agatha Christie, but it was mostly back in like high school, and I don't necessarily remember which ones. So I can go like, oh yeah, I read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I read The Mysterious Affair at Styles. But did I ever read Murder in the Mews? Did I ever read The Hollow? That's not a great title, is it? Let's see. I think I read Taken at the Flood. I think I read Sad Cypress, but I couldn't tell you what happened in them. That's another thing. Anyway, I'm very glad to have read one of her books again. It was honestly ultimately delightful. It's just so much fun to read them and be trying to piece all the clues together and be like, Poirot is onto something, and he keeps being like, these are the clues and that are suggestive to me. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So.